And we're back once again, only on it's Last Call. Last Call the Alcohol, only on the lastcallpodcast.com. And joining me here on location, it's the new year, and yet big things are still going on in college football. We have a lot to talk about as this weekend kicks off the Final Four, plus transfer portal news and a whole lot more. So I gotta bring in my guy who knows everything there is in college football and is on top of things. I give you once again from Tailgate Talk SEC. I give you it's Wil Thomas. So, Will, let's start off here with the first game, the Fiesta Bowl. It's Miami. It's versus Ole Miss. Nobody had this on the bingo card. Everybody thought these two teams would be knocked off within like the first or second round. How did we get here? And is this sort of like the biggest underdog versus underdog story in college football right now?
It's definitely up there. And I mean, like, yeah, like you brought it up, like I did not think Miami was going to make it through their first game against A&M, and I sure as hell didn't think they were going to make it through Ohio State. But they've kind of got this crowbar theory going on, where that defensive line, when they're playing well, they just throw a crowbar into the spokes of the other team. And it really doesn't matter how good the rest of your roster is. If you can't stop that front, you're going to lose to them. And like I go back to the Super Bowl last year, Eagles versus Chiefs. Like we saw that. The Eagles just devoured the Chiefs at on the defensive line, and it ended the entire game. So you look at what Miami's doing with Mesidor and Bain. Like through these first two games, they have absolutely dominated the other team's offensive line, and it's effectively ruined their entire plan. I mean, Ohio State's explosive passing game with Say to Smith and Tate downfield, it's been electric all year, unstoppable all year. And he still hit a one deep ball to Smith, but for the most part, that wasn't there because they just didn't have the time to drop back and let those plays develop with Miami's defensive line. And for Ole Miss, I mean, Trinidad Chambliss is the most electric football player I can remember seeing in a while. I mean, he plays the game so like there's so much risk in how he plays, but he just keeps working. That three-play stretch he had against Georgia, where it was the quick flip to Lacey, then the scramble back to his own goal line throw to Lacey for the first down, then roll out deep ball to Harrison Wallace. Like it's things you literally can't make up. And even though Ole Miss they have great individual talent, especially on offense, that roster pound for pound it doesn't quite stack up with the other teams in the playoff. Lane Kiffin leaving ticks something off in these guys. I thought it would be a galvanizing factor. I didn't think it would be this obvious. Like this team is playing on another planet than how they were playing earlier in the year, which is weird to say given that they're 13 and 1. But even though they kept winning all those games during the regular season, if you just cut the tape between, like, let's just say the game against Florida versus their game against Georgia, it's like it's a different team. I mean, both these teams are really playing their best ball right now, which makes it, even though it's not the teams that we expected to be here, even though we thought this might be Georgia versus Ohio State, it's impossible to not be so excited about what this game's going to give us.
I'll start with Ole Miss for a second. I get that the spite because to a man over in Ole Miss, they felt like Lane Kiffin did him dirty, and to the extent he has. I still I'm still trying to wrap my head around like they were able to hold Georgia intact. They did not let Georgia just run rampant all over them. And I get it, it's a rematch. It's they had tape, but still, when you go back, like how did they do it? Like what did I guess Pete Golding do differently in that second Georgia game where they were able to at least contain them, not let them go, buck, wild, but still like when they need to get stops, they made stops. How the hell did that happen?
I got to be honest, I don't know if I have a really good answer for you because, I mean, if you go back to that first game where Georgia and Ole Miss played, Georgia didn't punt once. They punted zero times. So leading up to this game, my thought was I think it's going to happen again. I don't see Georgia punting more than twice. And they still didn't, I mean, they still scored 34. Right? So Georgia's offense, it wasn't slowed down, like overall, but relative to what they're used to doing, it kind of was. And I kind of go back, look at the ground numbers. Georgia, they ran the ball for 124 yards and 3.4 yards per carry. Those aren't even bad numbers, but it's not what Georgia is expecting to be able to do. And it's not what they did against Ole Miss in the first game. Like they thought they could lean on the run game way more. I thought they'd be able to. But the ground game, it wasn't as dominant, right? It was consistent, but it wasn't to the point where we can run the ball 12 plays this drive and we know that we're going to take off 6 minutes and worst case get three. Like that just wasn't really there. And they scored 34, but seven of those were on a scoop and score. So really the offense was down 27. I mean, Ole Miss's defense, man, they're just bucking up. And I think that part of that is because being galvanized by, the chip on their shoulder after all that's happened the past few months. Like they're just playing so violent and so physical, where they're really just playing above their level of talent almost to where you're seeing in the trenches, they're stopping Georgia's running game like they haven't before, like really nobody has. So even though they're still giving up some big plays, you're seeing them really step up and just play more physical with more of an attitude that you need if you're going to make a championship run.
So now we go to Miami. And look, the defense has been out of its world the last two games. The offense is sort of just there.
Mhm.
And is this the game where they might finally get off, or is this the game where if you're Ole Miss, you're going, hey, look, we don't have to worry about, outscoring Miami by, third with 30 points. We can, if we score 21, 24 points, we'll probably beat Miami because no matter, despite all these transfers they got and everything they brought in from Miami, nothing seems to be clicking for that offense.
Yeah, I really don't like Carson Beck at all. I thought toward the back half of his Georgia career, it started to come out like no once there was tape out, guys knew what to do with him. He really got uncomfortable. And then coming into this season, after his surgery last year, I still wasn't sold on him. And so he was 19 of 26 against Ohio State. That was only 138 yards. And looking through the game tape, I mean, I think he maybe completed one pass that was more than 8 yards past the line of scrimmage. Like it's a lot of quick passing. So the passing game, I'm not worried about. What I am worried about if I'm Ole Miss is Mark Fletcher. This guy is running the ball with some serious attitude. I mean, he is physical, he is violent, and like he's going to run through the first guy who gets there every single time. So if you're Ole Miss, you have to be comfortable. Even though Miami has good receivers like CJ Daniels and Malachi Tony, who in theory could get downfield, in my mind, you have to make them do that. Like you have to say because if you trust your offense enough, even with Miami's D line, you can sort of play up in the box and say, look, if you beat us over the top right now, that's fine. If it's just 7-0, that's okay because we know we can score. If I'm Ole Miss, I am making Miami do that because they've shown that they don't want to. They want to make it quick and easy for Carson Beck. They don't want to have him sitting in the pocket for more than 2 seconds. They don't want to have him airing the ball out because I don't think they really trust him either. So everything in the passing game is, short to Malachi Tony, let him make plays in space. Little hitch routes or out routes to CJ Daniels, let him be a big body. But if you're Ole Miss, crowd the box, try and take away Mark Fletcher, or at least just hit him up to the point where he loses a step in the second half, and dare Carson Beck to complete a pass 20 yards downfield. That's what I think you have to do against this Miami offense.
Which coach, I guess, did people have more faith in right now? Mario Cristobal, who always delivers, but always seems to have that one or two games where it's like, oh God, Mario, what the hell are you doing? Or Pete Golding, who at times you're going like, is he just coaching off the seat of his pants? Does he know what he's doing? Are we sure? Like, can he keep his offensive staff? No, he can't. Like, who has the bigger guess question mark of this game for coaching?
It's a really good question because I mean exactly what you said is true. Cristobal, it seems like at least at this point in his career, he's due for a game where he pisses down his leg. Did he get that out of the way with Louisville and SMU? Maybe. Is it just his nature to kind of have one of those issues where if it's late, things are going to go wrong? I think it's possible. But then, like you said, Pete Golding has coached 2 games. So neither coach has been here. Cristobal obviously has more experience as a coach, just period. But I'm almost willing to let that be a wash when you get to this point because being in the semifinals of the playoff is so different than, playing against a conference opponent in week 4 to where I almost don't care that Cristobal has coached what, maybe 100 more games than Golding because I think that this is such a different environment being in the semifinals and we don't really have there's no sample to go off of Golding to what does he do in these massive moments aside from the Georgia game. But for Cristobal, you can kind of look at these big moments and say, well, more often than not, there's a head scratcher, right? That maybe cost you the game, maybe you get away with it. But we've seen Cristobal mess it up. We haven't seen Golding mess it up yet. But obviously, that is probably just because of the sample size. So you look at both coaches, I don't really have a bunch of faith in either. But based on what we've seen, if I had to pick one guy to make a mistake, it would be Cristobal.
Miami is a first-time defense coordinator, or first time for them defense coordinator. Corey Hetherman. Anybody from Massachusetts knows this is a guy who grew up in Oxford, Mass. Played quarterback at Fitchburg State. Now he's become a defensive coordinator from Maine, James Madison, Minnesota, now Miami. What is making the besides the players? And they had the same players last year. Like, what does Miami do defensively that gives teams fits? And does that? And if you're Miami, if you are Miami's defensive coordinator, if you are Hefferman, how do you attack a different beast than Ole Miss, which is more they want to run the ball. They don't have to worry about sling it all over the field like Ohio State did and Texas A&M. Like Ole Miss seems to be more like we want to run. Even our quarterback wants to run. And hell, we're going to try to run no matter what.
Yeah, so I mean, they need to just keep doing what they've been able to do, which is just getting pressure with four to start. Because the second that you start blitzing, like you said with Chambliss running, if they send 5 or 6 and Chambliss breaks contain, it's probably a gain of 30 yards. So they need to keep being able to get pressure with four. I think you do just assign a guy and say, you're going to be looking at Chambliss the entire game, and that's it. Shadow his every move. Do not let him get out of the pocket or pass line of scrimmage. Just, you got to swallow that up. It really does come down to me for Miami to get pressure with four because then you can keep your linebackers, 3 yards back to try and contain Lacey. You can have a guy spying Chambliss, and then you can just really just have your secondary just keep everything in front of them. You have help whichever direction you have to look to where even if the play does break down, like we have a DB there because we don't have to send someone else rushing. Getting pressure with four is going to be the name of the game here for Miami, and I do think it won't be like crazy consistent to where Ole Miss can't do anything, but those guys are good enough to where they're going to get there. So I think that you'll see with four, maybe 1 or 2 drives that just get derailed by a sack. You'll see pressure on Chambliss, and with how reckless Chambliss plays, he's really good at it. But if it's all game with Mesidor and Bain running at him, you have to assume a mistake happens. And we'll see the gravity of that mistake, whether it's just a pick, maybe it's just a missed open guy, something like that. But Miami getting pressure with four, it opens up their defense to succeed everywhere else because only sending four, you have enough players that left over to contain the entire secondary and have guys at that middle level to take away scrambles or short dump off passes. I think we lost it, Chris. I think you muted.
Sorry about that. So let's go to the star players of each team, or the guys to watch each game. Ole Miss, Trinidad Chambliss. Probably the best football story right now is since Kurt Warner. Ferris State, Bulldog quarterback came on to Ole Miss, supposed to be just a backup. Hey, I'm gonna be on a team. Simmons gets injured, he takes over, and now all of a sudden he is the most popular, even popular. He could run for governor of Mississippi. How did we get to this point? Like, what makes Trinidad Chambliss, this good when you look and it's like, well, he's not the best passer. He does everything wrong. You tell a quarterback, do not run all the way backwards. Don't, just back up all the way to the 20-yard line and then run around. This is not, play yard football. And yet, this 6'1", 200-pound quarterback from Ferris State he could probably go to Vegas right now, play blackjack, and get 15 hands, winning hands by, hitting on 19, getting 21. I can't explain it. It just makes sense. You try to make sense of this here, Will, because I've given up making sense of Trinidad Chambliss' success.
Yeah, it's hard to, just because of how crazy it is watching him play sometimes. So I mean, just this from the story alone. Obviously, coming from D2, like you said, nobody really thought he was going to be, this level of a contributor. really mainly just because Austin Simmons was there. But then you go back and you look at the announcement, like from the on three, that he was transferring up. Most of the comments and the replies are just like, all right, cool, random guy behind Simmons, he's our guy. But then there's like a few comments that look at like, this guy accounted for 50 touchdowns. Like he actually put up a bunch of numbers. So it was kind of there that he might be able to produce this much, you know, coming into this season, but it was hard for anybody to really believe it, myself included. But then he comes out, and obviously there's no tape on the guy against at least, D1 talent. But even if there was, you can't prep for what he can do with his legs, with his arm, his decision making, how good he is improving. So not I mean, obviously you can prep for a guy's tendencies, but not being able to prep for the way that he executes just about anything is a nightmare for any defense. And I think that it could still pose some problems for Miami, regardless of how good their defensive front plays. I think that you'll see both sides, whether it's Chambliss or Miami's D line, win their share of reps, which is what's going to make this game so fun to watch. But I mean, you can't really explain Chambliss' success aside from just saying, turn on the tape and watch, because you really can't explain what this guy does on the field without just looking at it for yourself.
He runs backwards. I mean, I get it. Look, and we're laughing, but when Shedeur Sanders did it, everybody was saying, "Oh my God, it's horrible, it's terrible. Don't do that." He does the same thing. It's almost like that guy who just like runs down the court, chucks up threes from like 30 feet away. You're going, no, no, don't. Oh, and he makes it like, okay, fine. You give me a heart attack, but it works. I mean, every play, even at Georgia game, he's running backwards, runs around, we're chasing him, he's scrambling, and he makes these throws on the run which don't make sense. Like, how? Like a football coach probably looks at this tape, looks at his quarterback, high school quarterback goes, "Don't do this." And the kid goes, "But it works. Don't do this. This is everything wrong. It's right. I don't know why it's right, but it's wrong, and you don't shouldn't do it." How does he do it?
There are just some guys who it works for. And I know that's not really an answer, but I mean, you go back to what Johnny Manziel was doing, and it's like it's inexplicable what he was doing in those games against Alabama. You look at just like some of Lamar Jackson's plays in college, like how is he not down? He's spinning through these defenders and just like doing hop, skip, and a jump to the end zone. Like Trinidad just might be one of those guys where you can't explain it. He just has that gamer in him. Baker Mayfield in the pros, there are plays where he makes you're just like, what the hell was that? And it's a first down or a touchdown. Like there are just this handful of guys who get things done that don't make any sense. And Chambliss is one of those gamers where it's just naturally in his blood to make plays and not get beat, not fold when there is pressure, not get nervous when there is a guy running down his face. Like he's just always composed and he always knows where his playmakers are or where the window is for him to run. Like he just has that gamer mentality about him, which is what makes him so hard to stop.
Meanwhile, the other end, it's not an offensive player, as you said. It's a defensive player. That is Ruben Bain. Look, this guy just, and I was asking for this. Where was, why is he supposedly a top three player if he only has three, four sacks in the regular season? Well, I've now been answered. He has posted double digit sack, more than one sack in each of his last two games. Made Ohio State offense tackles look like they were on ice skates. Did the same for Texas A&M. Made them look like they were on ice skates here. Could he go down as maybe the best defensive edge player for Miami since, or even best defensive line player for Miami since Warren Sapp?
He could. I think the guy who would have something to say about that is lined up next to him. I mean, Akeem Mesidor, like people talk about Bane, 8.5 sacks, and he should be talking about he's incredible. Mesidor's got two more sacks than he does. He has 10.5. So I mean, really, what makes this defensive line so good, both Mesidor and Bane, is the fact that they're playing with each other. I look at Dylan Stewart at South Carolina this year. Last year, as a true freshman, he was a freak. He had so many sacks, but he had help on the defensive line. This year, he doesn't really have help. So it's really just been him, and his numbers has gone down because offensive lines have been able to put a focus on him and not have to worry about other guys. Now, I'm not saying that Mesidor or Bain would be pedestrian without each other, but I do think you would see them have less sacks. But now, obviously, they both still have to earn the right to get to the quarterback, and they still both beat their offensive tackles, fair and square. But both of these guys complement each other incredibly well, and that's really what makes this defensive line so good, is both of them working in tandem, where even if one of them gets doubled, guess what? Can't double the other guy. You got to pick one of them to double. So as long as they're both on the field, it's just a nightmare for offenses having to deal with both of them at the same time.
You hear about, oh, he might have short arms. Oh,
Mhm.
he's not this 6'5", monster. He's not this guy like David Bailey who's just pure fast. When you see him, what makes him so damn good? Like, what is it about Ruben Bain that you look and go, you can't stop this guy. He's just inevitable almost.
Yeah, I mean, he's quick. You talk about his arm, so maybe he can't necessarily just like separate himself and push back on the offensive tackle and get space that way. But he can duck by you. He can spin right by you. I mean, he's so fast to where the arms, it hasn't really been a problem for him because he doesn't need all the time to out muscle and out physical the tackle. He can just spin right by you. He can go under that arm bar and get to the quarterback. He's so quick and so mobile. He has such a deep bag of pass rush moves where O lineman can't just sit on like, okay, he's gonna spin that way. I can get there. Because you get ready for that spin, and all of a sudden he's by you on your other hip. He's so fast, he's so mobile, he has such a deep bag of moves where those physical traits they don't hinder him because of how elite of an athlete that he is.
So right now, if you are Ole Miss, how do you stop him? Like, because I'm guessing that Pete Golding and Charlie Weiss Jr. are trying to figure out ways. Okay, we don't want him to just destroy everything, wreck the game plan. Next thing you know, we're losing this game 17-14 because we can't score. So how do they do it with Mrs. Dora and Bain, where if you're Trinidad Chambliss, if you're Key One Lace, if you're that offensive line, you don't stop them, but you basically, I guess the word is, limit them from making too many game-wrecking plays. How do you do it?
First of all, they need to do a strategy that I don't think Ohio State did well enough, and that is every single play, someone has got to chip them. You have got to make these guys feel you every single snap because they're incredible athletes. They are incredibly tough and they'll play through a lot of pain. But if they're playing through pain, they're probably less effective. You need to, I don't want to say hurt these guys, but you need to make these guys hurt, right? You can't just keep letting them hit you. You have to hit them back. But more just X's and O's, how much can you establish Lacey running up the middle? Can you de-incentivize them from from wrapping around the edge, and can you prevent them from getting deep in their pass rushing lanes? And then for Chambliss at the same time, can you make quick decisions and can you use your feet to once again de-incentivize them from just going, pin your ears back and get downfield as much as you can? If you're able to do those two things, X's and O's, as well as chip them, knock them over, bruise them, make them feel you, it probably won't stop them. But like you said, can you just contain them and not let them wreck the game?
Who wins this game? I'm putting you on the hot seat right now. Does defense win championships? So that's why Miami wins this game, or does just spite and sort of, we are Cinderella win this game because, well, that nothing else makes sense with Ole Miss. So who wins the game between Ole Miss and Miami?
This is the last question I wanted to be asked today. I mean, this game is going to be so good. Miami's only favored by 3. I think that is in part because, I mean, they're the more talented roster, but more importantly, they're winning that game in the trenches, you would think. But I thought the same thing about Ole Miss and Georgia. Georgia had every advantage in the trenches on Ole Miss, and I respect Gunnar Stockton a lot. So now Miami, once again, they have this edge over Ole Miss in the trenches. I don't like Carson Beck very much. I don't. And I think that Miami's offense is relatively limited in what they can call. Their talent is great, and they execute it very, very well. But I don't think they have a very diverse playbook that they can open up and threaten downfield. And Ole Miss you can't game plan for this offense because I'm not even sure that they game plan their offense. It's really just a bunch of Trinidad run around, figure out what's going to happen. I'm going to say Ole Miss. I think that they're reckless enough, right? They're dangerous enough to where you can't really prep for them. And I trust Chambliss more than I trust Beck. And I do believe that defenses win championships. I do believe that. Not being able to trust Miami's quarterback and Beck really worries me. So I'm going with the quarterback I like better. I'm going with the playmakers I like better. Give me Ole Miss.
Let's go to the heavyweight street fight, which is Oregon versus Indiana 2. That's right, the first match is pretty damn good, so hey, we're getting a sequel. Both teams came in here pretty dominant performances. Oregon chipped away on offense, dominated on defense to defeat Texas A&M and Texas Tech in their semifinal. Meanwhile, Indiana just basically took Alabama to the woodshed, slapped them around, called them Sally, pulled their pants down, and did everything else he wanted to do in that game, which I am convinced Kurt Signetti just decided at one point, like, you know what? F it. I want to really embarrass them. Let's call out everything here. So, is this almost like the perfect semifinal where you get two coaches who come from that same tree, two teams from the Big Ten, two teams that are basically there's not a weakness. If you can find one, good luck, because neither team
Mhm.
really has a weakness unless they play the other.
Yeah, this game is going to be so awesome. I mean, rematches, early in the playoff, you don't like rematches because it's kind of like boring and dull. Once you get to the semifinals and you get rematch like this, it makes the game that much more intriguing, right? And like you said, you have Indiana, who is an absolute wagon, who literally cannot be stopped. I thought they'd beat Bama. I had picked Bama to cover the +7. I've never been more sure in the first quarter that I was dead. I mean, they absolutely demolished those guys. And for Oregon, you know, Texas Tech's offense, it's it's not no, it's nothing crazy. It's been good though. Like it's been really good. And they didn't score a point. And I mean, Oregon's offense, obviously going against that Davis Texas Tech, it wasn't crazy explosive, but they were relatively effective, right? I mean, scoring 20 against Texas Tech is an absolute win, or 23. So Oregon has looked really, really good, and they were kind of my sleeper pick to win the title when this bracket came out because it was sort of just they're over there on the West Coast, right? They lost this game to Indiana. They haven't really beaten an elite. They haven't done, anything on the national scale that's been that intriguing, but their receivers are getting healthy. This defense is sneaky good. They have three great running backs. And oh, by the way, they might have the number one overall pick at quarterback in Dante Moore. Like both of these teams, I think they're really similar to each other, and the rematch should be awesome.
You figure Indiana probably is looking at this going, hey, we beat Oregon basically in Oregon. The weather sucked. It was cold. It was raining, and we still put up 30 on you guys. They're on cloud nine. If you're Oregon, what makes this rematch different, I guess? Like if you were Dane Lanning and Dante Moore, why are you telling yourself, "Hey, we got these guys"? Why is the second time around going to be different than the first time?
I mean, aside from just the adage that try to beat a team twice, like now they know that Indiana's real. Going into that first game, right? Like I mean, Oregon was laying what they favored by like 8 or 9, and I think the national thought was still that Indiana was this good team, but after last year with Ohio State and Notre Dame in those games, and just coming into this, going have to go on the road to Austin now, there was that thought like, this team is still fun, but they're not quite there. And I'm not saying that Oregon wasn't ready for the game or that they didn't prep, but I don't think they were expecting, best team in the sport effort out of the Hoosiers. Now they know, right? Now they know what Indiana's bringing to the table. They know how real this team is now, and they know how they lost the first time. And I think it is more powerful knowing how you lost to a team from Oregon's point of view here than for Indiana knowing how you beat a team because Oregon knows what they have to fix now, right? So you obviously lose the home field advantage now, and they have the travel disadvantage also going to Atlanta. But I think for Oregon, just now you know exactly what Indiana is. They're not sneaking up on you at all at this point. So I think Oregon will be more prepared for this game, but we'll see. We'll see how that actually plays out.
Let's go with coaches. First, it's Kurt Signetti, aka Google Me Bitch. Um, Look, he is right now the king of college football. and I hate saying this because it sounds blasphemy to some people in the South, but could you argue that what Kurt Cignetti is doing right now is even more impressive than what Nick Saban in that he has taken a team, which at the beginning of the year you and I talked about. Indiana is not a football school.
Hmm.
This is not like LSU. This is not, like Alabama. This is not like Ohio State where football is the number one thing. It's been a basketball school. And in 2 years, he has taken this team, won 22 plus games, got them into striking distance of a national championship his first time around. This time around, now they're the favorite. Like, is this like almost a generational performance for a coach in terms of taking a bad program and literally overnight making them a powerhouse?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the most impressive tier turnaround ever, right? I mean, I'm not sure I'm ready to say Saban yet just because of how sustained Saban's success was. But with the fact that he's doing this at Indiana, Cignetti is, it wouldn't take him that long, in my mind, of doing this to be like, this is probably the most impressive coaching job we've ever seen at any school. Because, I brought it up like Saban's sustained success. He wouldn't have to do this at Indiana for more than 3 more years for me to probably be ready to say, maybe not that he's a better coach than Saban, but that this is more impressive than what Saban did. Right? I mean, yeah, I mean, you said it all already. Like Indiana was, they had the most losses in college football ever as a program. They were a total afterthought to the entirety of the sport, and now they're 14 and 0, and they will be favored. They're favored in this game, and they will be favored in their next game if they win to win a title. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense, especially because you look at Indiana's roster makeup. They have no 5 stars. They have, I believe, it's 7 4-star players, and the rest are 3 stars and below. Like what he's doing with this roster that isn't even remotely as talented as Oregon, right? Or as Alabama's was, or as most of these schools that they've played. It's ridiculous. It's inconceivable. I thought his line at the Rose Bowl, it'll be a hell of a movie, was perfect. It's just perfect. I mean, what he's doing is it doesn't make any sense. It's unbelievable.
How does he do it? I mean, I've heard people compare him to Saban in terms of it's a cult down there. Everybody works for does the same thing. He said, "I'm not gonna sleep in my office, and till wee hours of the morning, spend 24 hours a day. I'm gonna do my job. I expect everybody to do their damn job, and that's it. I mean, it's not fancy schmancy. It's not, he's not Steve Spurrier. He's not Bobby Bowden, who they have those the good old Southern charm in the stories. He's this Midwestern guy with efficiency. It's like, well, we're going to do this. We're going to get done. And if not, well, piss off and get out of my way. Like, is he basically the closest thing we've seen to that Belichick Saban model that we've thought you need to do to win in college football?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the guy's a robot. I mean, you look at him on the sideline, his expression is the exact same focused, dialed in thing really I mean, I don't think I'd ever seen him smile until after the Rose Bowl when they were covering him for the trophy ceremony. Like he is such a robot, and it's so impressive to watch a guy be that dialed in and that focused and that unrelenting at all times. Even when you're up by 70 against a school for the deaf and the blind, you still think the next play is for the championship. Like that's what you need to win at this level of the sport. And he's clearly got it. And that's just something that not many people have. That's why he's beating all these schools who maybe they've been more nationally prominent for a while, but they don't have the killer instinct to win these last 3 games. Because the mental ability to win these last 3 games starts in week 1 when you're playing a nobody. Are you willing to kill those guys? Are you willing to keep your foot on the gas? Even though the game's in hand, are you still willing to put your body on the line to throw a block? That mentality that's forged then, that's what wins you these last 3 games at the end of the season. So Signetti being able to do that's where it all starts, is that mentality of every single snap. Like the only snap that's more important than this one is the next one. And then it's the same mentality going through and through. No snap is less important than the next one or the last one. And just that mentality is what's getting them here.
during the Heisman talk, you and I talked about Mendoza not having the great numbers, not throwing all the everything around, not having these, huge stats.
Mhm.
That's by how much of that is by design by Signay? It's like, okay, we're gonna win. We're gonna be efficient. I don't care about if you for how much is that part of a success in Indiana that everything is efficient. I'm not gonna waste anything. We're not gonna turn into a one-trick pony. It's almost, as you said, it's like a tax account. Everything is, measured, weighed, and analyzed, put into format, and there's nothing that is they basically we look and go, all right, it's pretty, but it's not really effective.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Like, not that Signetti didn't care about Mendoza getting the Heisman, but he definitely was not calling plays to get Mendoza the numbers for the Heisman. But like you said, like every play call he does is going to be, you know, because this is what we need in this exact situation. It's not because, well, if Mendoza gets 50 more yards in this game here against Illinois, it'll help his Heisman case. Like, that's not what he's doing. What he's doing is every play, every snap, what is going to give us the best chance to win over these next 6 seconds. And that's why you're seeing that maximum efficiency. That's why you're seeing no foot ever being taken off the gas. That's why they're demolishing people like they are.
His opponent is going to be Dane Landing, and quietly for he's a we don't hear about. I mean, it sounds weird with Lanning. He doesn't seem to get the respect, and maybe it's he's stuck in the Big Ten, which everybody looks in for. They had googly eyes at first for Harbaugh and Ryan Day, and now Signetti. He's or they look at Marcus Freeman and go, oh, that's a young guy. That's a young guy who we could see as possibly an NFL star coach down the line, but he's under 40 years old, 48-7. He is Big Ten champion last year. This year they've only lost one game, and they basically bent Texas Tech over their knee and spanked them like a redheaded bastard stepchild. Why is Dane Lanning a guy that seems to be, I don't want to say not respected, but sort of not talked enough about as this guy that quietly might be the best young coach in all of football?
Yeah, there seems to be an epidemic among like college football discourse where it's if you haven't won a national championship, you're not worth anything, which I don't understand at all because it's really hard to win a national championship. I mean, yeah, Oregon in their first year last year went undefeated and won the Big Ten. I understand they got spanked in the Rose Bowl, but I mean, they went and won that conference in year one. And then they've lost one game this season. But because he lost in the Rose Bowl and hasn't won a championship, he doesn't get the respect. Like they're winning a championship is as, you know, glorified as it is for a reason because it's really freaking hard. And not many people get to do it. And what I'm saying is common sense, but it seems like it's not understood very much that like just because you haven't lifted the national championship trophy, it doesn't mean that you're bad at what you do. It doesn't mean you're a bad player, it doesn't mean you're a bad coach, and it sure as hell doesn't mean that you can't. Because haven't yet does not mean never will. And I think Dan Lanning is absolutely going to win a championship. Is it this year? We'll see. But the disrespect that really, I mean, that Landing gets, like you said, but also that a lot of coaches get just because they haven't won it yet, it really blows my mind.
This will be if all goes according to plan now. This will be his third straight quarterback that he'll have sent to the NFL draft. And each of them are been as different can be. Bo Nix was a guy who more, as they dub him, a fullback playing quarterback, big guy, decent, decent arm, not great, but could sling the ball all over the field and also run it. Then you had Dylan Gabriel, who another guy, prolific passer, very small. They tailored the offense around and made him, successful, and they basically, sent him to the NFL, third round draft pick. And now Dante Moore, a guy who is more talented, but a first year starter, and yet they've hummed it around. He is in talks possibly to be either the number one or number two quarterback if he comes out this year in the draft. Again, why is it that we don't talk landing enough about this when you look and go, that's pretty damn impressive. This isn't guys he's getting with transfer portal who all of them fit the same mold. They're different. One of them was a first-time starter, and they've even been better than they were last year with a guy who came in with no college football starts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to how good he is as a CEO of a program, right? Because Lanning is a defensive guy. He was defense at Georgia, and that's the philosophy that he brought with him to Oregon. But he's so good at knowing what his strengths are and then and then finding the right people to delegate the other areas to. Like getting Will Stein as your OC, even though he's losing him this year, like that was an incredible hire. And the one of the biggest parts of being a head coach that doesn't get talked about a ton is who you hire around you. Like that was the biggest story with Kiffin this offseason. It was like, yeah, sure, he'll be great at whatever school he goes to. Who's he going to hire around him? And Lanning has done an incredible job of that. Like you said, just hiring guys around him to identify this talent, get it to Eugene, and then help develop it. Because no head coach does that by himself. None of them do. It's all a lot of it goes to the people who he brought in around him. So even though he's losing Will Stein and Lupoy on defense, given his track record here of hiring great coordinators who are then going on to be head coaches, that's what makes Lanning so good and why, in my mind, he's one of the best coaches in the sport. And there's no reason to believe that he can't replicate that and make two more great hires again at the coordinator positions going forward.
How much, final question of this, how much does it hurt for Lanning doesn't sort of act like some of these coaches? Like if Saban is very sort of regal, Kurt Cignetti is this professor who has a bit of an attitude. You have, the good old boy in Kirby Smart, and Dan Lanning's sort of this fun-loving but kind of psychopath who, hey, he'll talk crap. He has no problem rubbing it in. I mean, he's sort of the anti of what we want to coach, but how much is that sort of for him, his fit where he is, he likes to say he's kind of an a-hole. He admits it, and if you want to talk trash, he will back it right back up and throw it back in your face.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know, right? Because I mean, like you mentioned, all those other coaches, like they sort of have a personality that's their own, right? It's not like all three or four of those bigger guys are like the same, like mold of the same personality. For whatever reason, man, maybe it's because Lanning's all the way over there in Oregon. No one cares about something that's that far on the West Coast. Maybe it's because he hasn't won a championship yet, or he's not, like Cignetti, 14 and 0. Like, for whatever reason, man, Lanning and Oregon, they're just kind of, I don't want to say under the radar because I don't believe that like totally, but the respect isn't quite there like you would expect other, like for a program that's done what Oregon's done, losing two games going back to the beginning of last season to now. Like you would expect a lot more noise around them. Like I'm generally against the idea of SEC bias the way it's put in the media, but like I'm totally fine. Like if LSU had lost two games since last August, they'd be the talk of the sport. Right. And like for whatever reason, Oregon's not getting that respect right now. And Landing and the Ducks, they have a chance to, really reverse that narrative if they can go beat Indiana and then beat the winner of Miami and Ole Miss here.
So who wins this game? Does Oregon give it out a second time around and figure out Fernando Mendoza or Kurt Cignetti, or is this just Indiana's inevitable? And Kurt Cignetti is going to at the end of the year go, "We're national champions. Google us, bitch," and we'll all have to do that. Like, who wins this game?
Yeah. So my Indiana theory, I brought it up earlier about their talent profile and how it's 7 4 stars and that's it. What they have done has been incredibly impressive, and you watch them play, and they don't look like a bunch of bad athletes. But the national championships have been won by teams with a bunch of 5 and 4 stars for a reason. So my question with Indiana is that like, can they really win 4 consecutive games going back to the Ohio State game when they are the vastly under talented team? Because that's going to be the truth for this Oregon game and for the next game, whoever they play if they win it. And obviously they've looked incredibly dominant. And I looked really dumb during the Alabama game, and maybe I'll look dumb here. But I think just at some point, I have so much respect for Cignetti, and I have a ton of respect for all these guys on this roster. At a certain point, when you are the vastly less talented team, I think it's going to bite you. And I don't think they'll get blown out, but I don't think that they can win 4 straight games being this outmatched athletically. So I think Oregon can do it because I think you saw, what they can do against Texas Tech on both sides of the ball. And they want it really bad. Like I mean, the revenge factor against Indiana. Obviously Indiana's gonna be locked, and they want this bad too. The talent gap is what freaks me out. So I'm gonna go Oregon here.
Well, the other big news besides these two games is the transfer portal. That's right. And we're going to too far ahead, but let's first start off with there's so many freaking players in this transfer portal. And we keep adding on every day, like, oh, this guy's hitting the portal, this guy's hitting the portal. On a side note, before we get to this, guy who is the king of a transfer portal right now,
Mhm.
how do you fix it? Because this feels like it's almost still like just, a fat kid at a candy store with, mom's Amex card going nuts and nobody's going, stop, please. You're out of control. This is out of control. Like, when is there going to be control over transfer portal where there's almost now th over 3,000 kids in this damn portal? And it's almost every year it's going to get like even worse and worse and worse until somebody does something to stop it.
Yeah, so I like the portal as an idea. I think it's good. I think giving kids options is good. Having over 30% of the sport in the portal is bad. It's a nightmare. And in terms of a fix, for step one, you need somebody in charge of the sport, which doesn't really feel like it has to be said out loud, but I guess it does. But if I were in charge of it and I were setting the rules here, I think each guy gets one free transfer, right? We get to do all these guys are doing. Whether it's hitting the portal, they're going to the new school, and they're playing immediately. After that, you want to move again? That's great. You got to sit a year. There's an exception though if your coach leaves. If the head coach changes, you're granted a free transfer for that year to do whatever you want. But other than that, it has to be one free transfer, and then you have to sit a year because if you go back to where these kids can't immediately play, right? And like Cam Coleman, I don't believe he would I guess the coach is leaving, so it's a moot point. But like, let's say that wasn't true, and they kept Hugh Freeze, but Cam Coleman wanted to leave anyways. I don't think he would if he couldn't play next year, because next year could be his money year where gets paid for the draft. Brendan Sorsby, I don't think Sorsby wouldn't leave if he had to sit a year, and he's one of the best guys in the portal. Sam Levitt, he wouldn't be leaving if he had to sit a year. So I think that would fix a lot of these issues where there's this volume of player in the portal, right? And there's this many important players who all these kids who are fans have their jerseys leaving because there's no negative to them entering the portal because they know they'll find a place to land and they know they can play immediately. So having that rule back in where on your second transfer you get to sit a year, I think that would fix a lot of this.
How likely is that to happen? Because it's getting to the point where the coaches are getting sick of this.
Hmm.
The players, who don't transfer are getting sick of this. The fans are getting sick of this. And the NCAA, they're sick of this. So is this going to be like next year we're talking like there's going to be massive changes because it seems like everybody's now just at the point where like this needs to stop. We don't know how, but this needs to stop because otherwise it's going to get to the point where you might as well have like 6,000 kids every year start transferring, and it becomes basically just almost like the NFL draft. Hey, you know what? Let's just do this and the college level.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know a timeline. I really don't. I mean, because I think there's enough discourse now, especially with media figures, that this is not sustainable. Right. So, I mean, at some point, there has got to be a governing body or just a commissioner. Just put a dude in charge. I mean, it feels like that is such an easy step one that just hasn't been taken yet. But, I mean, I'd imagine with how quickly we're able to change the playoff for no reason, right? I'd imagine we can change the portal pretty fast too. I mean, we already kind of took one step, eliminating the second spring window to where this will be over in 10 days and guys can't transfer to one school not like their first, month and a half and then go somewhere else. So that's at least a plus. So one step has been taken, but there's got to be someone in charge. And hopefully in like 2 or 3 years we get this under control, but I just don't have a timeline yet because there's nobody who can make a decision.
Well, speaking of decision, Brendan Sorsby made a decision. He is now heading over to Texas Tech. That's right. Hey, oil money speaks volumes here. And well, they basically did that. They brought in Sorsby, Kansas State linebacker Austin Romaine, San Diego pass rush demon Trey White, including also Julian Lawrence, Bryce Butler, Dante Lee Jr., Jalen Jones, Amar Fleming. They're not done, so you know there's probably even more. I saw Damon Wilson's in Portland. He probably already had to figure it.
Hmm.
Text going, yeah, we want that. Just here's a blank check. Let us know how much, and we'll write the zeros. How big is Sorsby for them? After seeing what happened with Barons Morton, after seeing how they couldn't really score and weren't dynamic on offense, how big is it for next year for them getting the quarterback?
Yeah, I think it's really big. Because of what you said, right? Morton just wasn't enough when they went up against a truly elite defense. And Sorsby, I think, will be because he's so dangerous on the air and on the ground. He's hard for guys to game plan against. So having that wild card factor at quarterback, where you can't really just prepare for one facet, you have to do both. It makes it way easier for an offense to consistently score a bunch of points because they can do it in multiple facets of ways. One-dimensional offenses never work. One-dimensional quarterbacks can still work, but you're seeing this move towards dual threat guys who can hurt you both ways, and Sorsby can do that. So I do believe that Texas Tech, with how much money they're putting into both sides of the ball, really, and you brought up the defenders that they're bringing in and might bring in, defense should be just fine next year. And you bring back, you know, a guy like Micah Hudson. Can you bring him back? Can you finish off this recruitment of Trey Wilson from Florida to bring another receiver? Like they should have enough talent around Sorsby to where they just need him to play smart, efficient, and safe, right? And as long as he doesn't make his own mistakes or a bunch of bad mistakes, and he can keep playing to his own strengths, they should be much better next year.
Was Sorsby the best quarterback in your opinion on the market that they could have gotten? Like, would you have seen like Sam Levitt go there or DJ Lagaway, Justin Hoover? Was there anybody else, or is Sorsby the best guy for what Texas Tech needed?
I think he's definitely. I would say he probably is for Texas Tech. I mean, Levitt's really, really good. Um, I think him and Sorsby are pretty neck and neck for me. Mestamaker's probably a little bit too young for me to say he's a good option for, one of these top schools to go to. I think him going to Oklahoma State is right. Um, the Lagway thing, he has it is inside of him to be the best quarterback this sport has seen in a long time. It is. We've seen that with some of the big throws that he's made. We've seen it with some of the runs that he's done. He was healthy 0% of the year this year, and he was victimized by Billy Napier being his head coach. If DJ Lagway can go get coached and get healthy, it is there for him to be absolutely elite. But for Texas Tech, I think they did the right thing, not investing in making Lagway great. They wanted somebody who already was great. So I do think that Sorsby was probably their best option with that being their criteria.
Meanwhile, Indiana basically went out and well, what can I say? It's Hoover the Hoosier. We're going from Fernando Mendoza at the end of the year to Josh Hoover basically taking over. I'll give credit to Kurt Cignetti. He's not screwing around. He's not going to rest on his laurels. He's not going to take some time off. He's like, no, 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 no. I'm planning also for one takeover. I'm planning for next year's takeover also. How big is it that they get Josh Hoover and a guy who is a quick passer, a little more athletic than Mendoza, probably in terms of scrambling.
Mhm.
Doesn't have a size, but still a guy who is battle tested, and they don't have to break him in and worry about, okay, can this guy handle big time games?
Yeah, I like it a lot. And getting your quarterback early in the portal pays off because he can help recruit, Nick Marsh, who is now also going to Indiana. So getting a quarterback in early is a massive step one. Getting in a great, good to great quarterback is step two. And then you get to kind of see that pay dividends by getting that done early in the other skill guys who can then look at Indiana's system and say, this system works. I know I can thrive there, but who's throwing me the ball? Oh, a guy I can trust? I'm in. Right. So getting Hoover in there, not only just getting Hoover in there, period, was great. Getting him in there when they did is a big time advantage to then help Signetti also recruit other skill players to make that offense even more dynamic next year.
How big of a change for you is going to be for Hoover, though, in terms of Sonny Dykes let him sling the ball all over the place. It was the air raid, chuck and duck sort of, hey, you want to throw it 50 times? Let's do it down the field, short pass, whatever you want. You had to figure if you're Hoover, Kurt Signetti's not going to allow you to do that. It's going to be, look, this is the formula. We're going to do this. It's going to be more reserved. If you think I'm letting you just chuck it all over the field 40, 50 times a game, you are crazy, son. Nope. This is going to be like very strict, very, don't turn the damn ball over. Don't, no, don't just throw stupid throws. Like, how big is it for Hoover to sort of get reined in for a coach who's not going to just let him throw stats for the sake of throwing stats?
Yeah, it'll be a big mindset change for Hoover, but I mean, so you can be nervous about that on the surface. Like, I mean, Signetti, when he was recruiting him, there's no doubt in my mind that he was very upfront saying, what you're doing at TCU, you're not going to be doing here. We're going to do this differently. I'm going to give you a job and expect you to do it. And Hoover, like, he agreed to that. So he definitely knows that that's what's going to happen, and he's definitely on board with it. So it is going to be that big. It's going to be a shift for him mentally and how he wants to play, but he's definitely going in there knowing like I've got to do it. He's bought in, knowing that he's bought in and knowing that he has the talent to do what he's asked to do. I mean, it'll be an adjustment obviously in practice, but I don't think you'll actually see that hurt him just because of how evident I'm assuming that he made that change when he was recruiting him.
Was this the best fit? Again, like, it's Kurt Signetti. He probably could have got Dylan Raiola. He could have gotten maybe DJ Lagaway, Sam Levitt. Was this for Signetti the best fit in terms of, okay, he's talented, but he's still, pre-developed. I don't have to worry about teaching this kid. I don't have to pull his head out of his rear end. Could he have gone with DJ Lagaway route, or for Signetti, is this sort of the best of both worlds where he has a guy he doesn't have to worry about literally coaching this kid from the ground up yet?
I think the only other fit would have been Rocco Becht, but it doesn't. I mean, there's no shock to me at all that he followed Campbell to Penn State. So I do think, with Becht kind of being off the market the entire time, we knew where he was going. Hoover was probably the guy. I would assume that he called Mestamaker, right? Because he can kind of give you what Hoover does with his legs also, but with an absolute cannon of an arm. But when, Mestamaker and Becht, they were probably also fits, but they were following their head coaches. I think Signetti, the same thing with Lagway about needing to keep developing him. I don't think he wanted to do that, because he knows that they're currently in a championship window. So he needs to have somebody who's ready. So I think Hoover, Messamaker, and Becht were probably the three guys. And I mean, Hoover's plenty good enough for him.
Nick Marsh, as we've already seen here, as he has the bag, he has the jersey, he's ready here. How big is this for Signetti? And not only just getting a stud wide receiver. And by the way, he also has gotten Turbo Richard from Boston College, a dynamic running back. Got two pass rushers from TCU and Toby Ozunami and Chidi Obiazor. He brought in safety Jaquan Sanks, a tight end Brock Schott from Miami, Preston Zachman, a safety, and defensive end Joshua Burnham. But with Marsh, how big is it getting not only a talented wide receiver, but stealing him away from Michigan State? So you don't really add, you subtract from one of your Big Ten counterpoints and
Mhm.
literally just show them, yes, this is not the same Indiana. We are now the Kings, and you over here, you can just suck it.
Yeah, it's huge because it's such a good, plug and play for when they lose Surratt, right? Like you're not going to see him take a step back at receiver with Marsh, and he was able to produce really well this year, despite being at a bad Michigan State team that didn't have much of an offense. And Nick Marsh is 6'3", 200. I don't believe he's the same level of Cam Coleman, but Cam Coleman is 6'3", 190. So he's got even size on Cam Coleman. He's such an incredible athlete. Nick Marsh is one of, if not the best receivers in the portal class. I think I still give that to Coleman over him. On three has Omarion Miller rated over Marsh. I think Miller's great. I disagree with that. I think Nick Marsh is the second best receiver in this portal class, and he's a massive grab for Indiana for all the reasons that you said.
Are you surprised at how well Indiana did in transfer portal? Because we don't think of him as having money. This isn't, as you said, like Oklahoma State, which we'll talk about. They brought in all the guys from Morris's, Green, North Texas Green Wave, and just installing them there. This isn't Texas Tech, which has boatloads of money from oil money, and they're just going to go screw it, open check, whatever you want. Are you surprised that Indiana is now shopping at the higher bargain basement here?
Maybe a little bit, but I mean, players, there is obviously the money factor here for players at this point where they do want to go where they're going to get paid, right? They want to be paid their value. They also do still want to win championships. And you're looking at the programs right now, there aren't many programs that are evidently going to be competing for championships like Indiana. And even though it's only been 2 years and it's Indiana of all places, it's very clear that Signetti, you know, like this is not going to be just 2 or 3 years and then they're going to fall off a cliff. I don't think, because you're seeing what he's doing with all these 3 stars. Now he's bringing in blue chip guys. Like I think it's only going to get better for Indiana. So financially, they might. I actually don't know their like what their pool is like. So I don't know what they're offering these guys compared to other schools. But at a certain point for these guys, the difference in money that they're getting from these schools is probably pretty negligible. So you can look at, okay, maybe Nick Marsh is getting 200K less from Indiana than he would from just hypothetically Michigan, but he knows that he can go maybe win a championship in Indiana. So because of how good they are competitively, it doesn't shock me too much that they're currently getting, a bunch of these really elite guys.
All right, we talked about you talked about it twice now. Drew Mestamaker. He is in the worst kept secret right now in all of college football. He is heading from the University of North Texas Green Wave to the Oklahoma State Sooners and following his coach. Oh, by the way, uh, they've also added Caleb Hawkins. They've added wide receiver Terrence Lewis, Miles Young, Miles Coleman, Wyatt Young. They've basically added almost everybody from North Texas who's pretty good. So again, here's the question we talked about with Indiana that I'll ask with Oklahoma State. Can you win with a bunch of guys who were not 4 and 5 stars and almost in a very top heavy Big 12?
I think they can win in the Big 12. I mean, because that conference is the most open conference year in and year out that exists. So even though it is less so now, right? Like you said with top heavy, like Texas Tech is they seem pretty established. BYU seems pretty established. Arizona State, we'll see how they backfill this talent. I do like Cutter Boley, but they're decently established. So winning it is definitely less open than it has been, really in the past. But as a whole, that conference, as long as you have a good offense, you can win a lot of games. And for Oklahoma State, their schedule next year, they do play Texas Tech, but they get them at home. They have to go to Tempe for Arizona State. But I mean, they miss BYU. They do get a shot at Oregon too at home. That game's going to be pretty sick week 2. So I do think they can win in the Big. Can't like it's very clear how talented Mestamaker is and Hawkins is. So they should do a pretty good job of winning in the Big 12. I don't think they can win the Big 12 yet.
How good are these kids, Hawkins and Ned Mestamaker? Because again, still the Big 12, and as you've seen, it's not your father's Big 12 where defense was sort of like a suggestion. All of a sudden you're looking at BYU and Arizona State, especially Texas Tech, like they play good defense. So for a lot of these kids, as you said, and look, Drew Mestamaker in the American Alliance Conference is great. What happens when he plays much better competition and he's not maybe the best athlete on the field?
Yeah, so I have less questions about Mestamaker than I do for Hawkins, right? Because yeah, Hawkins is doing great in the American. Can he break all those tackles against power defensive linemen? Can he be faster than the linebacker getting to the edge? That's where I have a few more questions. With Mestamaker, if you just watch some of these throws, man, I mean, tight windows are tight windows everywhere you go, right? And throwing on the run is still throwing on the run everywhere you go. The balls that he throws are incredibly impressive, and I don't believe that the uptick in competition will really get to him at least in the same way that it could get to Hawkins. I think the world of both these players. Messenbaker, obviously, he won't be likely as efficient at, escaping pressure with the faster D lineman, but I do still trust his arm more than most people's in the country, honestly. But Caleb Hawkins, if one of those two guys does fall off, I'd imagine it's him, just because he's no longer, you know, he has a more of a strength disadvantage against the linemen. He has less of a speed advantage over the linebackers, just things like that, where running backs can really kind of get a bit of a shock to the system when they move up.
Finally, I have this guy right now as my top transfer player in terms of what he's accomplished, how good he is, and how he can help. Hollywood Smothers. Yes, you saw him at NC State, basically being State's offense. He entered a transfer portal, and he has now gone to one of the elite of the elite teams, that is Alabama. They couldn't run the ball at all this year, even though Tyler Simpson did a great job, even though they have weapons galore at wide receiver. That killed them in the end. So,
Mhm.
is he the answer for Alabama going forward? Especially if you're not sure if Tyler Simpson's going to return or not, and you're going to rely on a very talented redshirt freshman quarterback. Is this the guy that Alabama had to have?
I mean, this is a really big one. I brought this up. I was on a Twitter Spaces earlier this morning, and like comparisons are always kind of iffy, but this is the closest thing they've had to Jahmyr Gibbs since he left. And you saw their backfield this year. It was a bunch of, solid running backs. Did you ever see a Bama running back make a play this year where you're like, wow, that was explosive? Or it's like, what a cut. I can't believe he accelerated that fast. It was a bunch of guys who are physical runners, but they couldn't create for themselves. Smothers can create for himself and then some. He has the explosiveness that you saw with Gibbs at Alabama, where you just couldn't believe that this guy was even allowed to play the sport. So I do think that Smothers for sure is, I mean, he's exactly what they needed at running back. But now you have to also take consideration like you still got to block for him. Can we go upgrade the offensive line that had some holes that we're losing some guys off of that line to the portal. So you still have to help around him. But in terms of what we've seen succeed at Bama with Jahmyr Gibbs, Smothers brings that.
What should we expect from Alabama going forward? Because as you said, it's Smothers is basically this security blanket where there's talk that Simpson might either go to the draft, go to the portal. People in Alabama went from, "Hey, this guy's great," to, "Well, we could do better."
Mhm.
What are you hearing from who should we expect as quarterback next year? Will it be Tyler Simpson, or is it going to be one of the redshirt freshmen that we looked and went, "Ooh, they look appetizing."
Yeah, I think it's Austin Mack who came in for the Rose Bowl for Bama. He's a little more physically imposing than Simpson is, and you saw all the throws that he did make against Indiana, like they looked really good. It didn't look like he was that much of a step behind Ty. So I do think that you'll see Simpson probably portal. I don't think he's going to go to the draft yet. If I had to guess, I think he might go to Tennessee. But for Alabama, I do think you see Austin Mack playing quarterback. I think he brings a little more of a dynamic vibe to that offense. And I think the ceiling with Austin Mack is higher, but obviously I can't say what the floor is because we just haven't seen enough of Mack play. But I do think it's Austin Mack next year for Alabama, and he gives them the potential at least to unlock another echelon of offensive success.
Before we let you go, how weird is it that Alabama is now becoming a bigger player of transfer portal? Like Nick Saban, basically, fought, scratched, and clawed his way to make sure, no, we're not doing this. NIL transfer portal, no, I'm bouncing, and now all of a sudden, Kalen DeBoer is going, hey, this is pretty good here. He dipped his toe in a bit, and he's dipped his toe in a second time, and now it seems, from what I've heard, they're going to hit the transfer portal heavily, try to get more offensive linemen, maybe a tight end, get some defensive players. How weird is it when Alabama is going to be a transfer portal team in a sense?
It's definitely a weird, that dynamic to look at, but I think the reasons for that are just sort of, obviously changing of the times. Right now, like just about everybody has to use the portal effectively if they want to compete. But also, like, even though, Saban was there for the portal at some points, but like guys who were worth a damn playing football, they really weren't leaving Nick Saban. Kalen DeBoer doesn't have that draw of to at least players who are on that roster to be like, I don't care if I can get 500,000 more dollars. I want to be coached by you to get me into the NFL where I can make tens of millions of dollars. DeBoer doesn't have that pull. Saban did. So with that drop off in, retention ability, naturally comes you need to just try and strike hit get lightning in the bottle in the portal, be able to pitch not 4 years of success to a guy, but just 1 year of success to a guy. So it's an entirely different vibe, but I think it's necessary really for everybody, but especially for Bama here to make that adjustment, given how the times have changed, but also just the difference in head coach between Saban and DeBoer.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we always love having him on the show because he brings the heat and he drops a lot of knowledge on us here. I'll give you once again from Tailgate Talk SEC. I'll give you Wil Thomas. So Will, once again, where else can fans check you out at? Where is the Twitter, the YouTube channel, Instagram? Where can fans even check it? Do you have a Substack? Like where can fans check out your work?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at W Thomas Sports, and then YouTube, TikTok, everywhere else at Tailgate Talk SEC. I have been doing transfer portal stuff just about every second of every day. So if you're looking for portal coverage, I've got you covered, trying to make it as simple as possible. But it is a roller coaster.
Wil Thomas, ladies and gentlemen, once again, always on a pleasure to have you on the show. We come back. We got a lot more going on here. Only on it's Last Call. Last Call with the alcohol, only on the Last Call Podcast.com.